This is a quick lecture on Chapter 2, The Science of Happiness, Subjectivity, and subtitled The View from In Here. Gilbert starts off talking about 3 different kinds of happiness, but in the end, the only one we're really concerned with is emotional happiness. And emotional happiness, he gives a couple of examples and things like that. But in the end, the definition on page 41 that we're going to use is a subjective emotional experience described as pleasurable or enjoyable. So emotional happiness is any time that we say we are enjoying something or we get pleasure from something, then we can say that that's emotional happiness. And we do seem to spend a lot of our lives trying to get that kind of feeling. When we talk about whether or not we are happy at a particular moment, we tend to compare our current feeling of emotional happiness with our memories of our past happiness. We can't possibly compare happiness at 2 different times with the actual feelings because we're no longer in those moments. So we can only compare our current feeling of happiness, how happy am I right now, compared to my memory of how happy I was last week or yesterday or 10 minutes ago. The problem is that memory is unreliable, and Gilbert goes on throughout the chapter to show us through various experiments, which you should take notes on, how bad we are at remembering things. He shows us that unless we're paying very close attention, we miss a lot. And later in the book, he's also going to explain how not only do we miss a lot, but we construct memory based on all kinds of heuristics and shortcuts that means that memory is not that accurate. He talks about the concept of perceptual narrowing, where especially when we are focusing on one thing, we can totally miss other things. And there are a couple of videos on the website you can look at that are examples of perceptual narrowing. And change blindness. There are 2 of, because you have perceptual narrowing, which means that your perception is so focused on one thing that you don't focus on anything else around you. So maybe watching this video, you're focused on me and you're not noticing the stupid drawing on the whiteboard in back. Change blindness would mean you're so focused on me that you don't notice that something in the background has actually changed while you were focused on me. Because of both of those things, we're pretty bad at remembering things. So when we try to compare 2 memories or 2 types of happiness, we're pretty bad at it. It's just, we can't trust it. It's kind of inaccurate. Then he goes on to talk about the language squishing hypothesis. And the language squishing hypothesis, it's the idea that everybody gets the same amount of objective happiness from any particular event, but if you haven't experienced as much happiness as I have, then you talk about it differently than me. So we both have cake. You say, this is the greatest cake I've ever had in the world. And I say, well, it's okay cake. And the reason I say that is because I've had even better cake. And you are really excited because it's the best cake you've had up to this point. And the problem with the language squishing hypothesis is that essentially it's very... it's judgmental. It tends to dismiss other people's experiences and other people's feelings as less real. So that that you're experiencing happiness from the cake is somehow less valued than my experience of happiness from the cake because I've had better cake than you in the past. So we can sort of reject that way of thinking about happiness. Every experience we have does change the way we rate our happiness at every other moment and in the future. So to that degree, it causes us to actually contradict ourselves. It causes us to rewrite our past. So I have a piece of cake and I think this is a great cake. I love this cake. And if you ask me at that moment, I'm telling you how happy I am. I'm really happy. Then a week later, I have an even better cake. And I'm like, wow, this cake is amazing. I love this cake. And then you say, well, what did you think of the cake a week ago? Did you really enjoy it? And I'd be like, well, no, I guess I didn't because this cake is so much better. So I am now rewriting my past experience even though I was happy in that moment. But now I'm telling you that I wasn't. And that's what new experiences do. They sort of cause us to have incorrect memories. And the experience stretching hypothesis basically suggests that it's more, it's sort of it's the alternative to the language squishing hypothesis, and it takes this idea of experience stretching to say, well, no, every moment where you say you are happy is true. Every moment where anybody says they're happy is equally valid, and it's just different because even if they haven't experienced the same types of things that I have, it doesn't mean that they are not happy. People are happy, and they may be happy because they don't know what they're missing, and that's the experience stretching that might go on later in their lives, but they are still happy. And so he sort of ends the chapter by saying, no matter what you say, if we're going to talk about happiness in this book, we're going to have to go with the assumption that all claims of happiness, even if they're from one person's point of view, at one person's particular time in that person's life, they're equally valid. And so if we're going to measure happiness, eventually that's what we're going to have to measure. One person's opinion of their own happiness at that point in time. We're going to have to say it's equally valuable as any other person's measure of happiness at that person's point in time.